Wait a minute. You guys, there's fucking cameras on the fucking pavilion.
Not just this pavilion, but many people say on every pavilion there are cameras for public safety concerns, but also for security concerns.
Okay, before we get into this, I need you to understand what the claim built on GPS records is about. That stretch of Mississippi coastline, the one the boat traveled on July 4th, it is covered in cameras, gas stations, marinas, boat ramps, private docks, Ring doorbells, commercial surveillance systems running around the clock. And the boat that carried Nolan Wells passed right through all of it. If the cameras were there and the route is known, then where is the footage? Was it pulled? Was it preserved? Or did some of it quietly disappear while everyone was looking the other way? That's what the next 30 minutes are about. Stick with me. Because what follows is the most important piece of this case that almost nobody is breaking down.
All right. So listen to this. It's only 30 seconds, but you need to know and look carefully at the map to know where everything is. Okay.
Girl's house that I will call Ava D. Right here in the yellow is where the party was at. You can almost perfectly plot out every dock that they stopped at on this little trip of theirs before they went to the boat dock.
Okay, there's Horn Island right there.
Okay, this is boots on the ground journalism. This is Bree, Jess Bree. She did God's work and went right into the heart of Ocean Springs, the town that sticks together, the town that doesn't let anybody mess with it. And the information she found, she said, let's go through Nolan Wells and the boys' alleged last moments on July 4th, Horn Island, Fort Bayou, and Lover's Lane. Pay attention to what she's saying, all right? Let's go. This is Horn Island.
Looks like there's a sailboat out there, maybe?
Okay.
It's up there in the water.
That's the island. That is how long it is. It is pretty long, guys.
Yeah.
That's the west end, or that's the east end. That's the west end, or that's the east end.
And this light.
Oh.
And then over here is going to be the west end, and this is the washing machine that they're talking about.
Hold on.
Water is pretty choppy today, but that is the island. There's some houses right there. The next place I'm going to take you to is over by...
So that's the island. And there are some houses, right? There are some houses that are super, super close to the island. However, all these houses that she's about to show you are multi-million state-of-the-art houses with state-of-the-art surveillance systems. But it doesn't stop there. Hold on, y'all.
Lover's Lane, so you guys can see how much housing and stores are over there that have possible footage. But yeah, let's get to the end of this pier. Wait a minute, you guys, there's fucking cameras on the fucking pavilion.
Not just this pavilion, but many people say on every pavilion there are cameras for public safety concerns, but also for security concerns. Let's not forget the people that own these multi-million-dollar houses. They are the high society of Ocean Springs. Ocean Springs is not a place without crime, either stealing boats, stealing things. I'm not saying it happens a lot, but you know how rich people are about their property. Well, I guess anybody about their property. If you come in through the docks, right, you can have boats and break into houses. You can steal, but you can also steal boats. You can steal equipment. Again, it is heavily monitored. Not even to mention the flock cameras, but let's keep going.
And they can't even say they don't work because there's a fucking solar panel. Now, I know you see me watching you.
Now, sorry to pause. I just want to point out what she said. Nobody can say those cameras do not work. Oh, it was a malfunction. Oh, electricity. Because there are solar panels next to each surveillance camera that is angled to see every person walking up to the dock and also leaving the dock. This is not just this dock. This is reportedly every dock. But let's keep going.
And I know you see me watching me. There's literally cameras everywhere out here, y'all.
Everywhere.
Every fucking where. Okay, so I have now made it to Old Fort Bayou Pier where they pulled in.
Let's not forget, again, Old Fort Bayou Pier, where they pulled in.
To a stop. This is an oyster house right here, and then next to it is a fireworks stand. Now, I don't see any cameras here, but let me get in my car and I'll show you where there is a camera because I'm too fat to walk. For reference. What's that? Oh, what's that?
Old Fort Bayou boat off-ramp area. If they stopped in Old Fort Bayou, this is one of the areas they would have had to stop at. There is a camera aimed directly there.
Camera, guys, with a light. Is this nice? Oh, yeah. Okay, we are now over here. So that is how far the oyster house is. I want to show you guys something. Look at that fancy house over there. Y'all see the cameras? See the lights. I wonder if there's a camera over there. I'll have to go on the other side of that bridge and see what's going on. Now, where the ramp is, there is a drawbridge up there because this is a short bridge, so I'm sure there's cameras up there. They have to have cameras, which are the state law.
Cameras, they would have had to go under the bridge. She is sure, and I think so too, in any public thing, they would have cameras. Why? Because it is a drawbridge. The drawbridge is drawn up. You would actually need the cameras just in case there was some type of accident or for safety purposes.
I'll have to look it up. Now, this is where they would have come in at. Look at these fancy houses over here. That man walking his dog.
This is where they would have come in. You guys, these are multi-million dollar houses.
Maybe them?
Again, you would have security cameras aimed toward the water. A lot of people could pull up and do God knows what to the people inside. All right. You would usually, for a price, to have cameras.
Or maybe them?
Look at this.
All right, let's go look at some more. We're going to walk on this side of the dock so you guys can get a better understanding of what we're looking at over here. Okay, we are on the other side of the dock. And I want you guys to take a look at this. That's a catfish house. They are definite to have cameras in there. Look at these houses. Can you tell me none of these houses saw anything on their next stop to Lover's Lane? Which one on PT where Lover's Lane is?
The next stop is where they went to on Lover's Lane. Remember in the beginning when Pink Panther outlined where they said they dropped? This woman has gone to every place. And what do we see? Camera after camera after camera. Let's keep going.
Now, independent citizen journalists have physically walked this route. They've documented cameras at marinas, at fuel docks, at intersections near the water, public cameras, private cameras, commercial cameras, camera after camera at every stop along that GPS track. Attorney Ben Crump's legal team has sent preservation letters instructing recipients to immediately preserve all evidence in their possession in its original form, including surveillance footage, GPS data, electronic communications, and devices. Court documents from Jackson County Chancery Court show that Wells' parents have also subpoenaed several social media companies requesting records from Life 360, Snapchat, Meta, TikTok, and WhatsApp, legal preservation notices, subpoenas, court filings. All of that has happened. But here's the friction. Most commercial surveillance systems overwrite footage on a loop, some every 72 hours, some every 30 days. If no one pulled that footage in the first week, parts of it could already be gone. And nobody from law enforcement has said publicly, we secured it, we have it, here's what it covers. That silence, that gap, that is what this video is about. Here's the question we're sitting with today, and it's not the one most people are asking. Everyone's asking what happened on Horn Island. That matters. Of course it matters. But there's a question underneath that one. A question about the evidence itself. Did investigators secure every piece of surveillance footage along that boat's documented route before automatic deletion cycles erased it? And if they did, why hasn't anyone confirmed it? If they didn't, that footage is the closest thing we may ever have to an independent witness for Nolan Wells' final hours. And losing it would be irreversible. Let me show you what we actually know. Verified, sourced, on the record. The boat departed from the southern shore of Mississippi at 9:56 a.m. on July 4th, arriving at the western tip of Horn Island at 11:14 a.m., according to documents from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. Wells was last seen boating with friends around 3 p.m. on Horn Island, according to the Jackson County Sheriff's Department. GPS records show the boat left the island at 4:31 p.m. It then entered Fort Bayou around 5:52, returned to the dock, and traveled to the boat launch at 7:19 that evening. From there, the boat traveled over land, presumably towed by a vehicle, to the Biloxi residence of the boat's owners. Now, that's not one location. That's multiple stops, multiple transitions, a boat on the water, a boat on a trailer, a vehicle towing it through town. Every segment of that journey passes through areas with cameras. Notice this. The GPS data doesn't tell us who was on the boat at each stop. It doesn't tell us who got off where or whether anyone was picked up along the way. What it tells us is geography, a route, a path through one of the most surveilled stretches of coastal Mississippi, and that path is where the cameras were. Wells's mother reported him missing that night after he did not return on the boat with the rest of the group. He was reported missing that night, and his body was found just off the island 2 days later. So between roughly 3 p.m. on July 4th, when Nolan was last seen, and later that evening when his mother filed the missing persons report, that boat made multiple stops along the Mississippi coast. Each one of those stops is a potential camera location. Each one of those cameras is a potential witness. And each one of those witnesses has a shelf life. Let me stay with this for a moment, because this is the piece that most coverage has not broken down. Surveillance footage isn't like a photograph someone saves to their phone. Most systems, especially commercial ones at gas stations, marinas, and small businesses, record on a loop. When storage fills up, the oldest footage gets overwritten automatically, no human decision involved. The system just does it. Some systems hold 7 days, some hold 14, some hold 30. Very few hold longer than that unless someone manually intervenes. Unless someone walks in, pulls the footage, and saves it somewhere else. That's the preservation question. The legal preservation letters sent by the family's attorneys specifically instructed recipients to suspend any automatic deletion or overwrite functions on cell phones, computers, video cameras, and other devices. That tells you the legal team understands the clock. They know footage disappears. They took a formal legal step to prevent it. But a preservation letter is a civil tool. It puts someone on notice. It creates a legal duty. What it doesn't do is physically walk into a marina office and pull a hard drive. That's a law enforcement function. That requires a warrant or a subpoena, or at minimum, voluntary cooperation from every business and homeowner along that route. About 60 witnesses have been interviewed so far, according to reporting on the investigation. The boat's owner, his mother, and one other individual who was reportedly with Wells on the day of the incident have cooperated with the investigation, according to the Department of Marine Resources report. Witness interviews are happening, cooperation has been reported, but witness interviews and surveillance footage are two different things. A witness tells you what they remember, a camera tells you what actually happened, and cameras don't change their story. So where is the footage? The district attorney says evidence will stay out of public view until the grand jury reviews it first, a move prosecutors say is meant to protect the integrity of the investigation. That is a legitimate legal position. I want to be fair about that. Jackson County District Attorney Angel Myers McElrath has said state rules direct investigators and prosecutors not to make comments or release information that could affect the integrity of those processes. And in her own words, we are not taking time for time's sake. We are taking the time required to complete the work this investigation demands. Fine, understood. But there's a difference between releasing evidence and confirming that evidence exists. Notice this. No one is asking the DA to play surveillance footage on the evening news. No one is asking her to compromise a grand jury proceeding. The question is narrower than that. Has every camera along the documented GPS route been identified? Has the footage been pulled? Has it been preserved? Yes or no? That question can be answered without revealing a single frame. And it hasn't been. Unlike many nationally known cases where surveillance footage, body camera video, or an immediately identifiable suspect quickly shapes the public narrative, the Wells investigation has unfolded amid unanswered questions, conflicting timelines, and very little official information. For much of the country, social media has become the primary source of information about the investigation. Facebook groups, TikTok videos, YouTube live streams, Reddit threads, and self-proclaimed insiders have collectively shaped the public narrative far more than those actually conducting the investigation. And that's the cost of the information vacuum. When officials say nothing, the internet fills the silence, and it doesn't fill it with verified facts. Now, I want to separate two things clearly, because the online conversation around this case has gotten tangled in ways that make it harder to see what actually matters. Whether Nolan Wells' death involved foul play is one question. Whether the physical evidence along the boat's route was properly secured is a completely different question. And right now, only the second question can be examined with what's publicly available. Because the first question, that's for the autopsy, the forensics, the toxicology, and ultimately the grand jury. The private autopsy preliminarily found that Nolan Wells' cause and manner of death are undetermined pending investigation. The doctor who performed that autopsy said in his report that he could not rule out foul play. He also said he didn't find any apparent lacerations, fractures, or deep tissue injuries on Wells's body. He wrote that he did not receive Wells's internal neck structures, including his trachea, which were retained during the state's initial autopsy. The Mississippi State Medical Examiner has completed the official autopsy, but the findings will not be released publicly. Instead, they will be submitted directly to a Jackson County grand jury, along with other investigative evidence. So we sit with that. 2 autopsies, one inconclusive, one unreleased, and a grand jury timeline that has no public date. But the surveillance footage, that's not about cause of death. That's about movement, presence, absence, who was on that boat, who got off, who got on, where the boat stopped, what happened at each stop. That footage, if it exists and if it was preserved, could answer questions that no autopsy ever will. And that's why it may be the single most important category of evidence in this entire case. Let me bring in what an outside voice has said about this, because it matters. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer weighed in on the case, saying, "When you add it all together, what we see publicly seems to be an accident." She says a review of surveillance footage, witness accounts, Coast Guard communications, and the area's riptide conditions point toward a tragic accident rather than foul play. Notice this. She specifically references surveillance footage as part of her analysis. That means surveillance footage exists in some form. It's been reviewed by at least some parties. And yet the scope of that footage, how much of the route it covers, whether it's comprehensive or partial, none of that has been made public. Coffindaffer herself added a caveat, warning more details could still emerge. So even the outside expert who leans toward accident isn't closing the door. Here's what I want you to sit with for a moment. There are cameras at that boat ramp. People have photographed them. There are cameras at the marina. People have documented them. There are cameras at the gas station down the road, at the bait shop, at the private residences lining the bayou. Citizen journalists have physically walked this route and mapped camera after camera, and if the investigation secured all of that footage early on, great. Then when the grand jury convenes, that footage will tell the story more accurately than any witness statement ever could. But if parts of it were missed, if some cameras weren't identified in time, if a 30-day overwrite cycle ran its course before anyone pulled the recording, then a piece of the truth is gone, permanently, and no grand jury, no trial, no federal review will ever get it back. That is not speculation. That is how surveillance infrastructure works in every jurisdiction in this country. Footage has a shelf life, and the clock started on July 4th. Think about the mechanics of that for a second. The GPS data was obtained by CBS News from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. That department's report ends on July 5th, following notification that the Jackson County Sheriff's Office would take over as the lead investigative agency. So there was a handoff. Marine Resources started the documentation, then the Sheriff's Office took over. During any jurisdictional handoff, there's a window, a transition period where responsibilities shift. And in that window, if no one was specifically tasked with pulling surveillance footage from every business and residence along that route, footage could start aging out. Was someone assigned to that task on day 1, day 2, day 5? We don't know. Because no one has said key information like when Wells was definitively last seen remains unclear. That line comes from reporting just days ago. Over a month into this investigation, and the most basic factual question, when was Nolan Wells definitively last seen, still doesn't have a clear public answer. If the cameras along the boat's route were secured, they could help answer that question. They could show who was visible on the boat at each stop. They could show whether Nolan was present when the boat reached the mainland. They could show what happened at Fort Bayou. They could show who was in the vehicle that towed the boat to Biloxi. All of that, sitting on hard drives. Or not. The United Cajun Navy's Vice President Brian Trasher put it plainly. That's been the gaping hole since the very beginning, is that nobody seems to have seen or heard from Nolan. Cameras could fill that hole, if the footage is there. Now, I want to be careful here, because I know what's circulating online. I know there are unverified audio clips. I know there are conspiracy theories. I know there are AI-generated videos that have nothing to do with this case. Crump himself has said AI-generated videos falsely depicting Christine Wansley, Nolan's mother, have circulated online. It's just god-awful, as they're grieving and trying to fight for the truth, that they are also having to deal with these fake videos attacking them, Crump said. NBC News has reported on how false claims and speculation have filled the information void around Nolan Wells' death. I'm not adding to that. This video is not about theories. It's not about what anonymous accounts are claiming. It's about one specific verifiable question. The cameras were there. Was the footage secured? And until someone answers that question on the record, it remains the most important unanswered question in this case that almost nobody is asking loud enough. Now, I want to bring something into this conversation that shifted the ground underneath this case. Ben Crump's legal team announced at a press conference that they had obtained video footage from Horn Island. Crump described it as showing an argument involving Nolan Wells shortly before he disappeared. According to Crump, Wells can be heard in the video saying, "Give me my freaking phone. What are you freaking doing?" Stop there. Crump argued the footage raises new questions about witness accounts and how Wells's cell phone ended up in another person's possession. Think about the mechanics of that for a second. If Wells was asking for his phone back in a moment of confrontation, that changes the texture of the narrative. A phone isn't just a device. It's a record. Texts, location data, app activity, call logs. If someone else had his phone, then any digital trail that phone produced after that moment doesn't necessarily reflect what Nolan was doing. It reflects what whoever had his phone was doing. Now, to be fair, Tresiston Shepard, a friend who was on Horn Island that day, told Rolling Stone that he, not Wells, can be heard yelling in the video. So there's a dispute about whose voice that is. Crump said other young people who were present identified the voice as belonging to Wells. A witness says it's his own voice. That's not something I can resolve. That's something audio forensic experts resolve. And according to Crump's team, they've retained exactly those kinds of experts. Crump stated at a press conference that his team has retained audio engineering experts to review audio evidence in the case. But here's why this matters for the surveillance footage question. If there is a dispute about what happened in the final hours, and there clearly is, then the cameras along the mainland route become even more critical, because the video from the island shows what happened before the boat left. The cameras along the coast show what happened after. Who was on the boat when it docked? Was anyone dropped off along the way? What was the demeanor of the people at each stop? Was anyone visibly distressed? Was anything loaded onto or off of the boat? Those are questions witnesses can answer with words, but cameras answer them with proof. And proof doesn't have a competing memory. Proof doesn't have a reason to protect itself. So let me connect this back. The legal preservation letters sent on July 20th were addressed to multiple parties. Recipients were instructed to preserve electronic communications, GPS data, devices, and surveillance footage. That was 16 days after July 4th. 16 days. Now, some commercial systems hold footage for 30 days, others hold 14, others hold 7, and some, particularly smaller businesses, overwrite every 72 hours. If the family's attorney sent those letters on July 20th, and some systems only hold 7 days of footage, then any camera that wasn't independently pulled by law enforcement before July 11th may have already been overwritten by the time the letter arrived. That's not a theory. That is math. That is how digital storage works, and that is why the law enforcement response in those first 72 hours matters so much. Not just for witness interviews, not just for processing the scene, but for locking down every camera within range of that GPS track before the footage cycled out. The FBI released a statement confirming they have assisted with certain aspects of the investigation using federal tools and partnerships, that they've maintained an effective partnership with Jackson County over many years, and that from day one, they have been supporting Jackson County to gather information and find answers for the Wells family. Federal tools and partnerships. That's the phrase the FBI used. That could include digital forensics. That could include cell tower data analysis. It could include pulling surveillance from federal facilities if the boat passed near any. But again, it's a general statement. It doesn't tell us specifically whether anyone walked that GPS route camera by camera and pulled every recording. Notice this. The people who have done that work, at least publicly, are not law enforcement. They're citizen journalists, independent investigators, people with phones documenting every camera they can find along the route, photographing them, logging them, creating maps, saying, look, this camera points directly at the boat ramp, this one covers the fuel dock, this one captures the intersection where a vehicle towing a boat would have to pass. That kind of work is valuable, but it's not the same as having subpoena power and walking into a business on day 2 with a warrant. And that gap between what civilians have documented and what investigators have confirmed they collected is still open. Remember the question from earlier? Did investigators secure every piece of surveillance footage along that boat's route before deletion cycles erased it? Here's why it matters now. After the family's meeting with DA Angel Myers McElrath, Nolan's parents said McElrath told them once the investigation is complete, she plans to present the findings to a grand jury, which would determine whether there was any criminal wrongdoing and whether anyone should be indicted. A grand jury. That's where this is heading. The DA's office has said convening a grand jury does not mean there is any criminality and is standard procedure for most unnatural or suspicious deaths in the county. Understood. That's a fair and accurate statement of how the system works. Grand juries are investigative bodies. They review evidence and decide whether charges are warranted. Their convening is not an accusation. It's a process. But here's the thing about a grand jury. They can only review the evidence that's put in front of them. If surveillance footage from a marina was overwritten on day 8 because nobody pulled it, that footage never reaches the grand jury room. If a gas station camera captured the vehicle towing the boat at 7:30 p.m. on July 4th, but the recording looped over on day 15, that image never gets projected on the screen for jurors to see. The grand jury can only weigh what exists, and what exists depends entirely on what was preserved in those first critical days. Ben Crump put it plainly. He said Nolan's family still has no answers about how their son went to Horn Island and never came home. A thorough investigation must be completed, and the district attorney must put every relevant fact before the grand jury. Nothing held back, nothing overlooked. Nothing overlooked. That phrase lands differently when you understand that overlooking a camera for 10 days could mean the footage no longer exists. And that's the tension this family is living with. Christine Wansley wrote on Facebook, if advocating for our deceased child to have a fair, honest, and transparent investigation while asking local authorities to treat his case as if it were their own makes you feel some type of way, please unfriend and block me. She's not asking for a conviction. She's not asking for a verdict. She's asking for a process that treats her son's death seriously enough to collect every piece of evidence that exists. She continued, we just want the truth. His father and I will not stop searching for the truth. And the truth, if it's out there, might be sitting on a hard drive in a marina office. Or it might already be gone. Now, there's something else I have to address here, because it's become part of this case whether anyone wanted it to or not. 3 people have been charged with threatening a judge, a witness, and local officials connected to the investigation. None of the 3 appear to know Wells, his family, or the boating group, or be part of the investigation. Let that sink in. People with no connection to Nolan Wells, no connection to his family, no connection to the investigation. Threatening a judge, threatening a witness. The threats came amid rampant speculation and scrutiny of the investigation, deepened in part by uncertainty surrounding Wells's final hours. This is what happens when the information vacuum gets filled by the internet instead of by investigators. People who have never set foot in Mississippi, people who have never spoken to the family, people who have no evidence at all, deciding they know what happened and threatening real human beings over it. Wells' family members and friends have received both animosity and support, with many strangers taking sides. Some of Wells's friends who were with him that day and local officials have said they received threats against their lives, and now because of those threats, the boat owner's mother has deactivated her Facebook and said she fears for the safety of her children. She wrote, "No one in our family is trying in any way to impede with the investigation by law enforcement or to otherwise hamper the family and law enforcement's quest for answers," adding that her son cooperated fully with the sheriff's investigation. I want to be clear about where this channel stands. Threats accomplish nothing. They don't bring evidence to light. They don't preserve surveillance footage. They don't help the grand jury. They make witnesses less likely to cooperate. They make the investigation harder. They dishonor Nolan's memory, and they are illegal. Mississippi officials have also had to warn the public about fraudulent documents circulating online, including a fake toxicology report. Officials emphasized that no official toxicology report has been released and urged the public to rely only on verified information. Fake documents. AI-generated videos of Nolan's mother, death threats against a judge. This is the wreckage of an information vacuum, and surveillance footage, real, verified, time-stamped footage, is the antidote to all of it. Because you can't deep-fake a security camera with an unbroken chain of custody. You can't fabricate footage that's been pulled by law enforcement under warrant and logged into evidence. That's why securing it mattered so much. And that's why confirming it was secured matters now. What does the family want? I think Christine Wansley said it most clearly. On Good Morning America, she said, "We just want honesty and transparency. We want a thorough investigation. We want that same respect that would be given to anybody else, and that's it. We just want answers. That same respect that would be given to anybody else. Sit with that." Nolan's father, Elmore Wansley, said they always told their son, "If you go with a group, you stay with a group." A parent's advice. The kind of thing you say because you love someone and you want them safe. And now those words carry a weight that no parent should ever have to feel. Christine remembered her son as gentle, loving, and able to make people around him feel welcomed and valued. She said they had taught him about history, but he was a peacemaker who didn't like division and wanted everyone to be included. He would have turned 19 in August, this month, right now. While we're having this conversation, hundreds of miles from Mississippi, members of the New Orleans community gathered for a second-line procession to honor Wells and call for justice. Organizer Reuben Evans said the event was intended both to celebrate Wells' life and remind his family they were not alone. Evans said, "We're not afraid to question. We want answers. We just want the Wells family to know we are behind y'all." Here's where the case stands right now, as precisely as I can state it. The state investigation is ongoing. The official autopsy has been completed, and the findings will be sent for grand jury review. Neither the official state autopsy nor the independent autopsy requested by the family has provided clear answers about the teen's death. The independent autopsy's preliminary report said the cause of death was undetermined pending further investigation. No grand jury date has been publicly announced. The investigation has no public timeline for completion. And on top of everything else, Nolan Wells' mother is now under investigation by the Mississippi Board of Nursing. Crump stated, "The only thing that changed is that she started asking questions." He added that Christine is now also forced to defend her professional record. A grieving mother, burying her child, fighting for answers, and now defending her nursing license. Crump's response: "She did what any grieving mother would do. She took a leave of absence to bury her child and search for answers." I'm not going to editorialize that. I'll just let you sit with the facts. So let me bring this back to where we started, because the question hasn't changed. It's only gotten more urgent. The Mississippi coastline along the boat's July 4th route is blanketed with cameras. Citizen journalists have documented them. Attorneys have sent preservation notices, subpoenas have been filed in Chancery Court for digital records from multiple platforms. The GPS data from the Department of Marine Resources maps the boat's exact movements that day. The cameras were there, the route is known, the legal tools have been deployed. But no official has publicly confirmed what the footage shows. No official has confirmed that every camera along that route was identified and its footage secured. No official has confirmed whether some of that footage may have already been lost to automatic overwrite cycles. And that silence is the story. Because if the footage is there, it will speak for Nolan in ways that no witness statement, no theory, no social media post ever could. It will show what happened and when and where and who was present. It will either confirm or contradict every account that's been given. And if parts of it are gone, then we will never get them back. And the grand jury will be asked to evaluate an incomplete picture. Christine Wansley, Nolan's mother, described her grief in her own words. This loss, this grief, this pain, it's different, it's insurmountable. And then you get this flood of emotions all at different times. An 18-year-old who was gentle, who was loving, who made people feel welcomed, who wanted everyone included, who went to an island with friends on the 4th of July and never came home. Every camera along that coast was watching. The question is whether anyone was watching the cameras. We'll keep following this until there are real answers. Not theories, not speculation, not AI-generated lies or anonymous social media posts. Answers. If this case matters to you, make sure you're subscribed so you see every update as it develops. Now I want to hear from you. Knowing what you know now about the surveillance infrastructure along that route, the preservation letters, the deletion cycles, and the silence from officials, what stands out to you the most? Drop it in the comments. Because the conversation this family deserves is one built on facts, not noise.